If you've tried to book a therapy appointment, you know there's a shortage of mental health professionals. It's not unusual to have to wait weeks or months for an appointment. So, with the rise of platforms like Chat GPT, could we harness AI technology for talk therapy purposes to treat things like depression and anxiety?
We were extremely skeptical that this topic would even warrant a full episode on the Happy Eating Podcast. But as you've heard us confess before, we're sometimes pleasantly surprised once we dig into the research. So did we change our mind after researching this topic? Let's find out.
Carolyn, I feel like this is the summer of super fascinating topics.
You do?
Yes.
Are we going to have some creative juices flowing?
I
Because
mean,
you know what? I'm a new person, though. I don't know if you can tell. I have gotten past graduation, past senior trip. It is about to be June, and I feel like a huge weight has been lifted.
Yes. Well, and especially because there's some breathing room before it's packing up and moving off to college. But
and me moving.
And you moving. That's right. Yeah. So we keep, I want to say the word stumbling upon, or the phrase, I want to say we keep stumbling upon these really fun topics. We don't actually stumble upon them. Like we go through a lot of media throughout our work lives, right? But what I'm excited is we come up with this idea and we're like, well, this should be good. And then we get into it and we're like, oh my gosh, this is fascinating.
Well, you sent me the topic. What we're talking about today is if Chat GPT, or essentially AI, can serve as your therapist.
Yes.
Instead of actually going to one. And you sent me an article, maybe through social media, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I thought, there's no way, there's not going to be enough info on this for us to make an actual episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you sent it to me, I thought you were just sending the thing to me just for me personally.
Well, and it was just one study that I sent you. And so I thought like, oh, when we do one of our study roundups, we could talk about this one.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to be honest. When you said, let's do this as an episode, I thought, one, there's not enough information probably for a whole episode. But two, I was very skeptical. I thought, there's no way I'm going to recommend this. But let me tell you what, one of the AI chat boxes that we discussed that I'm going to share, I just downloaded on my phone.
I love it.
I'm kind of sold on this.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now,
but I did download it, and then I was like, I don't know what to say to it. But I guess I'll wait till I'm like upset about something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's get into it because I feel like more of how you use it will come out.
Yeah. So, if you've done Chat GPT or any other kind of AI thing, it is so cool. If you have not, just give it a try. Just type something random in it. Ask it something. It's kind of scary. It's so cool and intuitive. So, we've been hearing rumors like, AI will replace doctors, will replace teachers in the future, that kind of thing. I've thought, will it replace dietitians? That kind of.
I mean, in the field of writing and editing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we worry about it all the time. Like we have clauses in contracts now with writers about, using AI.
Yeah. So, but I never thought about it to use it as like in place of a therapist for mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And that just felt like not right to me. Like not healthy, not safe, not probably effective. And there are some big concerns that should be acknowledged surrounding it. So we're going to start with just kind of glossing over those big concerns, and then we're going to jump into what kind of more the positives and what two studies and kind of what's made us totally rethink using it for therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or for mental health.
Exactly.
Maybe not as a substitute for a therapist, but yeah.
As a supplement. I would go with supplement versus substitute.
Yeah. Yeah. So first, these AI chat boxes, and there's some different ones out there, but just general ones, they are not FDA approved. Most of them have not been designed with, specific mental health, like training or, what am I trying to say? They're not necessarily based on psychological research and expertise and that kind of thing. They're also unregulated.
Yes.
So, that's kind of scary too, versus if you're using it in place of a therapist that has to be licensed and have a certain amount of training.
Yes.
And they're actually, I think it's the state of Utah has now proposed legislation to add some kind of regulation on these mental health chat boxes. And that's what we're referring to, like these Chat GPT things. We say Chat GPT, but it's essentially AI, and they are AI chat boxes that may be offered through, a website or an app. They are also, these chat box are not the same, okay? And you're going to see that. The one I looked at, it seems to be amazing and had fabulous results. But that doesn't mean everyone out there is going to be give you the same stuff and is as rooted in science and that kind of thing as the one I'm going to talk about later.
Well, and there are different ways that that not only how they're created, but then how their learnings, right? Like, who are they learning from? Like ChatGPT, for example, there is a feature within ChatGPT where you can go in and request that they can't learn from you. Oh. Right? And so
when it learns from you, that's how it's really adapting. That's really key in the therapy part of it.
No, I mean, like, they can't use your prompts and the information that you share with it. You can ask ChatGPT to not use your prompts and the information that you share with it to further inform future ChatGPT intel.
Okay.
So it still learns from
like
you, but it's more like a privacy thing.
Okay.
Right?
So I probably need to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could, it could be helpful. It just depends on.
Although the only thing I've really used ChatGPT or AI for is to do roast my Easter picture, where everyone was putting in their family Easter pictures, and you're telling it to roast my.
It didn't
Easter
really roast
picture.
yours enough. I mean, it was very gentle in its roasting of you.
Yeah, it was hard on my kids though.
Yeah, that's true. It was. But anyway, so just to reiterate the point, I was really just trying to like add more context to the fact that like they are
very different.
Can be very different. Yes.
Yeah. Lastly, there is concern, particularly with the American Psychological Association. I think they're kind of leading the fight that there needs to be some federal regulation. But because they feel like it can endanger the public, that is AI chat boxes posing as therapists. And this one study or article I read cited 2 cases where parents have filed lawsuits against an AI chat box that was called Character AI. And it was after their teenage children interacted with it, and these chatbots claimed to be licensed therapists. And after extensive use, one teenage boy attacked his parents, and then the other teenage boy died by suicide. So again, be very careful with these. But we're gonna share some, or I know I'm gonna share one that seems to be very effective, possibly, and very promising.
Yeah, and there are. Before we get into the science, like there are some benefits that like I feel like you and I have just thought of, like, naturally, like as we've talked through it, like there is this shortage of mental health professionals. We know that.
Right. And do you see that stat? There is, for every 340 people in the U.S., there's just one mental health clinician, according to some estimates.
Wow.
I mean, it's hard especially if you need like a new therapist, or it can be weeks to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of your stuff is, it's more of an immediate crisis.
Yeah.
Than it is like, oh, I can just hold on to this for 3 weeks. Like, it's not, it's like, I really need to get through this.
Yeah. And that was
current issue.
One of the, Therabot is the one I looked at that I'm going to tell you about. But that was one of the benefits, is there was no time constraints. It's the other thing, that when you get in with a therapist, you got to make your 2 schedules work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there were no time constraints. And so when people were in a crisis or in the middle of the night, they could use this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I also, to layer onto that, as as we keep hearing more and more about the loneliness epidemic,
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, when I'm going through a tough time, like I really rely heavily on my network, my friends, my family. And so if you consider the loneliness epidemic and the lack of mental health professionals, there's not necessarily the network that people might really benefit from.
And for those who may not have used Chat GPT at all or much, and I have used it very little, but you forget that you're not talking to a real person.
Oh, yeah.
It is that kind of intuitive and personalized.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can see how it could be useful for the loneliness epidemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what really turned the tide for us was when we started digging into these studies.
Okay, so we're going to tell you about 2 studies. The first, Brierley looked into, and it compared the responses that people got from AI when they were seeking mental health questions.
Mm-hmm.
And they compared those responses to what an actual therapist would say.
Correct.
To see how they compared, how they differed, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you about a second one. I've already mentioned it's with the Therabot chat box. And this is actually the first randomized control trial where they used it to treat major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and eating disorders.
Interesting. Okay, and for listeners to remember, a randomized control trial is literally like the gold standard when it comes to research that you do. So in the study that I'm going to talk about, there was some blinding so that some of the bias was removed. And then there was some additional analysis done on the back end to even further try and remove bias.
So how did they do this? Did they do question prompts and give the question prompts to enter them in Chat GPT and then give those same question prompts to therapists?
Sort of.
Okay.
Yes. So what they did was they took, they called them vignettes. They took 18 vignettes of
situations
of couples.
Okay.
So it was really couples counseling focused.
Okay.
18 vignettes of couples. They asked licensed therapists, some of them were masters, some of them had PhD, and one had a medical degree, to respond to
that situation.
And so they got 18 responses to not 18 times 18. They got 18 responses to the 18 vignettes, right?
Yeah.
So real licensed people to respond. Then they put those responses in. They used Chat GPT. I think they used 4.0. Chat GPT 4.0. Maybe it was 3.5. Whatever. I don't think that's that relevant to our listeners. It's not that relevant to me. Nonetheless.
I didn't even know that had numbers.
So then Chat GPT generated 18 responses. So they
didn't put those answers in.
No.
They put the vignettes in.
They put the vignettes in and then prompted
and then they compared the therapist responses to the Chat GPT response for each of those situations.
Then they went to a panel of normal people.
Okay.
Regular old humans. A few hundred, in fact. And they had them read
the responses.
Now, they told the participants that they would they could be getting a Chat GPT response or they could be getting a therapist response.
Okay.
But they did not obviously tell them what they were getting.
Yeah.
And so they gave them these responses, and then they asked these people to say, do you think this is an AI response or do you think it is a licensed therapist response? So that was question number 1. And then question number 2 was rate the quality
of the response
and the helpfulness, of the response.
Okay,
right?
I can't wait to hear these results.
Okay, so when it came to identifying who the author was of the response, it was basically, it was a 50-50 shot. As in...
So really they couldn't tell.
They couldn't tell. They correctly guessed that it was the therapist was the author 56% of the time, and then they correctly guessed that it was Chat GPT as the author 51% of the time.
Washout.
it was basically a wash. They couldn't figure out like who said what.
Yeah.
Right.
Which says to me the responses were pretty similar.
Right. Exactly. Now, when they looked at let's call it the effectiveness, the helpfulness, whatever, of the responses, generally the participants preferred the AI response that came from Chat GPT.
Even though they may not have known it was AI generated.
Right.
Yeah. They found that response to be more helpful.
They found it to be they liked the tone of it, they liked the advice of it, like all of the different things that they measured that they asked about, participants preferred it from Chat GPT. But here's the cinch.
Okay.
Or the wrinkle or whatever. So when they thought that a therapist wrote the response, they rated it as being better, higher. They gave it a higher rating. When they thought ChatGPT wrote the response, they rated it lower. So basically, responses written by ChatGPT and then misattributed to therapists, those ones got the highest ratings of all of them.
Wow.
But when they compared the way the responses were written and the words used and the cultural sensitivity was something that they looked at, the Chat GPT ones came out superior.
Wow. That makes me feel better about this whole concept of using it as, if we're going to use it for mental health.
Yes.
That's crazy. Okay. Well, I am going to tell you about this randomized control trial. This is the first time they actually tried an AI chat box to treat actual conditions. This is so fascinating. This is a 2024 study. It was just published this spring in the New England Journal of Medicine, which you don't get in that journal unless it's some good research.
It's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
So they called it an expert fine-tuned Gen AI powered chat box. And the name of the chat box is Therabot. So let me tell you, they had 210 participants. Half got a 4-week Therabot intervention. I feel like I'm saying that wrong when it comes out of my mouth. Therabot intervention, which means they could interact with it on their own when they wanted to, as little or as much as they wanted to. The other half of their participants got nothing. They were just the control. Okay. Now, the subjects either already had or had been diagnosed based on their symptoms with major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder, or they were identified as being clinically high risk for an eating disorder.
Wow.
Based on their baseline symptoms. So this is kind of some serious.
Very serious. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so they looked at the symptom changes, the disorder-specific symptom changes. They measured those at 4 weeks and 8 weeks, and they compared them to baseline. Okay, so they only got 4 weeks of therapy. So then, the 8 weeks was kind of like the follow-up to see if this stuck. Results. The Therabot group showed large and significantly greater reductions in depression, anxiety disorder, and feeding and eating disorders. It was across the board, all three.
Wow.
I know. This was at the 4-week mark, and this was at the 8-week mark. So still was sticking, at follow-up. Now, here's what's I found really interesting is kind of some, not when they dug into like user satisfaction, user engagement, that kind of thing. So user satisfaction was really high. Users found it really easy and intuitive to use. They liked the interface. Participants reported feeling better after interacting with Therabot and found sessions with Therabot helpful. And most reported that they felt like they were with a real therapist.
Wow.
Okay. User engagement. So of those in that group that got the intervention, 95% interacted. But listen to...
That's a really good participation.
Listen to how much they interacted. The number of mean messages, so the average number of messages sent by each participant during that 4-week period was 260. That's a lot.
Wait,
Then,
in how many?
in 4 weeks.
Okay.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
260 each person on average sent back and forth messages, 260 messages to Therabot. So they were having some engaging discussions.
I mean,
That's a lot.
I feel like that statistic alone totally supports the fact that at the very least, this should be a tool for supplemental to talk therapy.
Or for loneliness.
Yeah.
Okay, so the average number of days each participant interacted with Therabot, 24. And we're only talking about 28 days total. So participants on average interacted 24 out of the 28 days. Then they looked at the mean
Nobody
time.
can go to therapy that much, friends.
No.
You can't go to therapy. In a 4-week time period, you're lucky if you can go 4 times, which is 4 hours.
Yeah. And I'm sure...
Not even, because usually a session is 45 to 50 minutes.
It'd be interesting to compare, like, how much time you save. Like, I'm sure, like, a whole therapy session, you can get certain things covered, but typing this in with messages back and forth probably goes a lot quicker.
And do you need a whole... Do you need a whole hour?
No.
Or do you do better with little check-ins throughout the day, which, like, I can say for me, when I'm in a bad spot, you know this about me, I do much better with, like, little check-ins versus, like, a 2-hour stint of, like, quality time.
Well, so listen to this. Over those 28 days, the average amount of time each participant interacted with Therabot was 16.18 hours.
Wow.
It's almost... I don't have time to go to therapy 6 hours a month. This would be quite expensive, too. Very expensive.
It was 6, just to clarify, because at first you said 16.
I'm sorry,
So it was
6.
6.18 hours. So it was 6 hours out of a month.
In a 28-day period.
That, I mean, you're right. Especially because, in fairness to therapists, like, they work during business hours.
Right.
So... like, that's a lot of business hour time to take away from life.
So, and they said one reason, in the discussion, they think they had such a high level of engagement, because this is amazing. Like, I couldn't believe this engagement, this interaction, is that users had unrestricted access to Therabot. So they had anytime, anywhere interactions. They had access to therapeutic support when they most needed it, regardless of the time or the location. And the authors of the study really thought that was one of the most significant advantages that it offered.
Absolutely.
Now, let me tell you about this next one. Something called Therapeutic Alliance. And they say Therapeutic Alliance is really a critical mediator of change in therapy. And essentially what Therapeutic Alliance is talking about is that bond that is created between the participant and the therapist. And the strength of that bond and the strength that participant develops, or the trust that participant develops with the therapist, is one of the overall predictors of how effective talk therapy will be. Mm-hmm. What they found is that within 4 weeks, participants developed a strong therapeutic relationship with Therabot, and that added to the consistently high usage rates. So they were really able to actually form a bond.
Well, completely actually makes sense to me, because the point of AI is to learn you and then adapt its responses to you. So, like, I have a profile saved in Chat GPT, one for my work and one for my personal use. Mm-hmm. I use them on different platforms. Yeah. Well, the one for work knows, I've taught it which brands I work on. Mm-hmm. So I prompt it with, like, for this brand, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. For this brand, blah, 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 blah. For personally, I've taught it about me. Well, then I was helping somebody with their resume. And the next time I went to it, ChatGPT thought that that was my professional history. So I corrected it and then started working with it. And because I did do some prompts using like therapy prompts using ChatGPT. And so it learns you. So I can see that you do develop that bond because it learns how to work with you.
Yeah. And if you haven't used AI, that's something you may not know.
Right.
It learns you, it learns about you, it builds on that. So why do they think it works so well? I mean, these results just kind of blew my mind. One thing that's important to know, they created, this is not just your average chat box. They created TheraBox specifically for mental health support. And they rooted it, I don't know how they even create these chat box, or like how you even like.
Yeah, the back end and the information that you feed it, and that just is way beyond me.
They rooted it in evidence-based psychotherapies for anxiety, depression, and like your feeding and eating disorders. Wow. So that's one reason why it was so effective. But when you combine that with AI's ability or capacity to adapt to an individual's needs, and resemble that human interaction, that combined with evidence-based therapies is really what made it so effective, particularly when you can get it at any time you want.
Yeah.
So, I will link TheraBot. I looked on the App Store. There's an app called TheraBot with an exclamation mark. That's not it. But they have a website, and it looks like they have now added where you can chat with it through WhatsApp. I know. So I will link that in the show notes only because these results are so positive, and we're not suggesting at all that this replace your therapist or that you do this instead of a therapist. But gosh, it sure can help when it's 4 weeks to get into a therapist, or you're having a crisis and you don't see your therapist for 10 more days, or, you're just having a bad day.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I think there are other little ways that it can be used that aren't directly tied to a mental health condition, but that promote mental wellness.
Yeah.
Like I've seen women in the dating scene like use it to kind of give them like a little boost on like, help me, give me talk me out of this, kind of scenario. Or I think that you could use it to ask it, like, I was playing with it to do personality analysis.
Yeah.
And then so I was like, all right, based on this is what you know about me. Here's my birth date. Let's take a little bit, and part of the knock is like, let's take a little bit of astrology. Let's take a little bit of personality. Let's blend the two together. Let's give you a personality analysis. Then you can refine it and ask it what.
You got deep into
to dive into specific personality
analysis. And then
analysis.
based on all what it had learned about your personality, then you ask it, what are my strengths in relationships? What are my weaknesses?
Yes, exactly.
And it was fascinating.
It was really fascinating.
Really cool.
So a lot of it is about the prompts, right? And one of the things I did find was I was on Threads yesterday, and I found some really interesting prompts that people had tried out for this kind of purpose. So definitely like look to see what's out there if you want to play around with it, if you feel like you don't really know where to start. But also think about different ways that you can use it. Like, do you need a pump up before you go to a presentation? Do you need, I don't know, a mantra when your kids are driving you crazy? Like I'm making things up here, but the point is that there are other ways besides like just dealing with mental health diagnosed conditions that it can be leveraged for your mental wellness.
Well, I'm just blown away by this study.
Well, research is what convinces you and me. I mean,
true.
And that is, I think, like really what resonated with us is that we really didn't expect there to be legitimate.
Yeah, and the high level of engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to link the TheraBot webpage in our show notes if you're interested in just checking it out. It looks like on their site there's several tabs. It does there under services, it does say get therapy. That's not the free chat. That will find you like a therapist in your local area. You want to do the chat now, and you just set up a free account. And yeah, it does have, and then you can set it up on WhatsApp if you use WhatsApp. So I will link that as well as the 2 studies that we discussed. But this is really exciting.
It's so exciting. I can't wait to see what comes next because this is just the beginning. Whew. All right. Well,
until
new
next
AI
week.
therapy.
Yeah. Let's go get you some therapy, Brierley.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Happy Eating Podcast. I'm Brierley Horton.
And I'm Carolyn Williams. If you liked this week's episode, then don't forget to rate and leave us a review on iTunes. And be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a new episode.
We can't wait to have you back at our table next week for a brand new episode. Bye.
The contents discussed in the Happy Eating Podcast, such as advice, studies, text, graphics, images, and other material discussed or presented on the site or podcast, are for informational purposes only. Content is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your mental health professional or other qualified health providers with any questions you may have regarding your condition. Never disregard professional advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on the Happy Eating Podcast.
If you are in crisis or think you may have an emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. If you're having suicidal thoughts, call 1-800-273-TALK, that's 8255, to talk to a skilled, trained counselor at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you are located outside the United States, call your local emergency line immediately.